Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Jeff Spiegel, U.S. Head of Blackrock Megatrend, International and Sector ETFs at BlackRock, to discuss the mega forces that are creating shifts in profitability across economies and sectors. Jeff, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Great to be back with you, Jill.
You got it. We see important mega forces or structural shifts that are creating big shifts in profitability across economies and sectors in meaningful ways. One of those mega forces is geopolitics and economic competition. How are investors feeling the impact of this theme today?
So it's really interesting. We've been on kind of a one-way escalator ride when it comes to globalization, really since the end of World War II. And there were a few factors driving that. The Bretton Woods system, sort of championed by the US after the Second World War, and really for the last 20 years or so, the opening up of China. The reason we see sort of a reversal today that investors have to be paying attention to are threefold. One is the disruption of supply chains during the COVID-19 pandemic, leading companies to reorient their supply chain towards resiliency and away from low cost. Second, the war in Ukraine, raising a lot of concerns about energy and food and other commodities and the ability to have those be safe from a supply chain perspective. And then lastly, that big force that was driving so much globalization the last 20 or so years, the US and China relationship has become increasingly fraught. So as these three forces are occurring, we think globalization is going to continue to some extent to move into reverse. That creates challenges for investors. It also creates opportunities.
What are the implications that you're watching for investors as a result of a fragmenting world?
There's really three areas that I would highlight that investors should focus on and capture. The first is tech competition. So as countries around the world compete for sort of next generation industries, be they electric vehicles, be they artificial intelligence, there's a lot of subsidies happening. There's a lot of investment and innovation happening. And this means that especially areas like semiconductors that are really foundational to things like electric vehicles, to things like next-gen communications, and certainly to artificial intelligence are massively in focus as governments around the world spend heavily to support these industries and as demand for things like semiconductors increases dramatically.
How are you seeing investors implement thematic ETFs in their portfolios to take advantage of this investment opportunity?
So what I would really say is investors have to think about not just thematic ETFs, but also subsector ETFs, regions, and countries. And if we sort of think about some of these opportunities, we already talked about increased tech competition, and semiconductors, SOXX, is a really key ETF for capturing that, up about 40% on the year. But we also have to think of some of the other impacts from these changes. So think about reindustrialization, nearshoring, friendshoring, that reorientation of supply chains. And here, an ETF like IGF is incredibly relevant, the iShares Global Infrastructure ETF, because it's helping economies reorient modern infrastructure for the new ways that supply chains are going to work. IGF is the largest, most liquid ETF of its kind. And then lastly, this geopolitical tension around the world means that investors have to be really conscious that there are going to be net winners and losers around geographies. But in particular, there's a lot of emerging markets countries that are going to benefit from this competition, that are going to be parts of the competition, playing both sides, if you will. EMXC, our ticker Emerging Markets ex-China, captures a lot of those economies that are really set to benefit from the competition around the world, even as some other countries start to struggle with it.
All right, Jeff, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.
Thanks, Jill.